Brunswick, Maine at the Bowdoin Music Festival, and we just played Tchaikovsky's Souvenir de Florence together.
That's right.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the viola that you play and why you play it and what you love about it?
My former teacher, Pony Bauer, very generously loaned the viola to me for more than a decade now. I think it was since 2005. Yeah, something like that.
So that's really a part of your voice now, right? I mean, you've grown up with this instrument, really.
Basically, yeah. And I'm still have a little fear of waiting for that phone call one day. Need the viola back. College tuition.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an interesting story about this viola. The label of the viola indicates it's made by Brothers Amati, but in year 1680.
So it's a 17th century viola made in 1680.
Yeah.
It's always hard to tell exactly who made these things, right? It's like, there's a little bit of this hand and a little bit of that hand on it.
Charles Beard thinks that it's Enrico Cattenar. So, there's always that discrepancy in terms of who really made the viola and from which shop.
Tell me a little bit about what has drawn you to this viola in particular, and why you've chosen this instrument over maybe a modern instrument. A lot of people are playing modern violas. Mm-hmm. What is it about this instrument that's special?
Yeah, they're great modern instrument from many very talented maker, and I wouldn't say that I prefer one over the other, and in fact, eventually I think I would want to commission an instrument so that at least if I get a phone call, I have something to fall back to.
Yeah.
But this particular instrument, I liked the fact that it sort of has a streamlined sound, and you can get a really focused tone. Under your ear, you might not get the kind of a typical wider, dark, and just kind of a fatter viola sound that many people associate how the viola should sound. But that could be a double-edged sword, right? You can penetrate very well, but you might not provide the body needs, or depending on the way that you draw the sound.
So what is a viola sound? What should a viola sound be?
Well, that's could have many answers.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. What is your answer? Like, what do you look for in a viola? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
What are your needs out of the instrument, or what do you look for?
Obviously, if the viola can be as versatile as possible, depending on the situation. For instance, if you're playing in a solo concerto and your sound has to carry over the whole orchestra, you need something that's very focused and has a great punch and kind of a penetrating quality. But if you're playing a string quartet, that might not be the quality that I want to look for in a string quartet setting. Mm-hmm. I studied also with Michael Tree, so that's always kind of like an ideal viola sound in a string quartet setting, with this great Busan instrument, and later on he used a Izuka instrument as well. But in some way it's a Michael sound, right? He always able to produce that sound that belongs to him. But the sound that viola, I think, should have in the quartet should have that kind of a connectivity quality between the cello, especially on your lower strings, that you're able to pair up with the cello, and on the upper string you're able to pair up with the violin.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the most difficult things about the viola, is that the demands for the instrument are to basically be a chameleon. I mean, you have to blend so much, and then sometimes you just have to become a soloist, right? And that's complicated, because some instruments sound great at close up and they disappear at distance, right? And
exactly.
Yeah. But this instrument, I mean, it's a lovely viola, and you make a lovely sound on it. It's beautiful.
It
has that variability, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you noticed that it has quite a bright top. Like you can make it really carry on the top register, and it has a really focused mid and low register. But in the bottom, it doesn't have that kind of a wide and almost organ-like sound.
Although I think at distance it does.
It might. That's something that's another aspect of the sound of the instrument that we will never know.
Right. Often I think with older Italian instruments it can be deceptive, right? When you're closer it sounds one way and at distance it sounds another way. How big is this viola?
The length is 16 3/8. But from distance it might look small because it's quite narrow. Mm-hmm. It has a pretty high belly and the shoulder is quite narrow. And I guess on the larger side, so the viola on me looks small.
So was this viola ever cut down in size?
No.
So this is the original.
Yeah.
Wow, that's unusual because a lot of older violas were very large or very small, and it's unusual to have this kind of contralto size, like this perfect medium size.
Right.
So that's wonderful. You have a crazy string setup, which I love. I adore it. It sounds really beautiful. But who uses gut strings?
Well, first of all, gut strings are.
Yeah, tell us what you have. Like, what strings are you using?
Okay, so my lower three, D, G, C, or the D and G, I use olive, and on C I use olive Udexa.
So these are gut strings with a metal winding.
Yes. And I don't remember the gauge, but one thing about the gut string is you really have to find the gauge that really fits your viola.
Huh.
From time to time, before I found this particular setup, I was turned away from the gut, and I think the reason is that I had the wrong gauge, and that just doesn't work on the viola. And I was lucky to given a set, and the gauge worked great. And from that point onward, I feel this gives this particular viola the darkest sound. And the other string I prefer recently is also the Kaplan string, the one that you're using.
Yeah, the D'Addario.
Yeah.
And you're using that for an A string, is that right?
I prefer that. I'm still trying, different ones. I think with the Kaplan they also have different versions. One is Amos, one is
Forza. It's unusual. These days, less and less people are using gut strings or gut core strings because they can be sometimes inconsistent. But it was remarkable actually when we were playing with Tchaikovsky. You're not sitting there tuning your instrument all the time, so it's really quite stable. Yeah. Surprisingly stable to me, anyway.
And one crazy story about the kind of dealing with the stability of the string is you do have to let your instrument be in the environment that you're playing. Get them used to it because
for temperature or humidity.
Yeah, for temperature and humidity.
Yeah.
And I remember playing a concert in Hawaii in the church that has no AC, right next to the ocean, and there's no green room or backstage right where we're having to play, and we have to walk through this grass field from where we're preparing in the green room or office of the church, and they have AC there, and I immediately know that it's not going to work if I were to warm up here and then bring my instrument into the church and play. It will go just crazy, the tuning.
Right.
So I ended up just, did a little bit of warm up, and 30 minutes before the concert, I just leave my instrument in the church.
Wow.
And I just go on stage,
Going
grab
cold.
the instrument and play.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's like the string can get quite crazy.
Then they'll go completely out of tune and so what kind of regular maintenance do you do for your 350-year-old viola?
Well, the wear and tear obviously comes from playing, the constant contact with the fabric on the shoulder part, and of course sometimes we hit the instrument at the corner. I guess the most important maintenance I have to do is actually trying to keep my bow straight. Because there are a few times that I use my bow to catch the corner on the other side when I'm doing a end of a long bow.
I've done that. It's frightening.
It's very scary.
The sound is magnified by the instrument, but it's breathtaking.
Yeah, I ripped it once in a concert. It was actually the last chord of the Andante movement in 131.
Yeah.
You have that weird chord, right?
Yeah.
That you go through. You have to go back to the bottom and play the D flat, and I was doing that, and my bow was not straight, and then I catch that corner, and then I just hear this.
So the next day, Mr. Neubauer.
My bow is okay, but
That's right. How's the bow?
Yeah, but I feel this viola is quite strong. I mean, it doesn't seem to pose a lot of great issues unless I do something to it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And in terms of adjustment, the last adjustment I got was actually from a gentleman in Michigan area called, his name is Mark Norfleet. And, I like the setup very well, but then he built he carved out a measuring thing for me to measure between the bridge and the fingerboard. So one of the important thing about the sound is actually where your bridge is sitting, after you adjust everything else. And I think that the bridge do change the sound a lot. And obviously when we tune the instrument, we constantly move the bridge.
Right.
So it's nice to actually know what is the ideal distance between the bridge and the fingerboard. And I have that device and I depend on that a lot.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it does help. Every time when the sound is not great, usually is because the bridge is not at that right distance. So
Well, thank you for talking with me about your viola.
Thank you.